Hello, welcome back to YCFT. This week, we are back talking about The Creeper. Begrudgingly, we are talking about 2017's Jeepers Creepers 3. Returning viewers know how fond we are of Jeepers Creepers released in 2001, Jeepers Creepers 2 released in 2003. We waited a long time for this film. And I'm just going to say outright, it's a massive disappointment.
It's a really sad way to end a trilogy.
Yeah. We currently have... Well, say we. We are currently waiting on the remake, which has itself come across its own legal trouble.
Which we only found out very recently.
Yeah, over distribution rights. So whether we even get that film now is...
It won't be for a while.
It won't be for a while. But
at the very least.
But Chris, we waited a long time for a third installment. And that for years I followed their production rumours and stuff. Because Victor Salva never actually wanted to do a sequel to it.
No.
He incorporated the 23 days, for 23 days it gets to eat. So that he wouldn't do dozens of sequels.
Yeah, thinking that there's a literal cut-off point with what you can do, that 23rd day of the timeline. But they found a loophole in that for the sequel.
Set it a few days
set it within the same 23 days. Yeah.
We talked about the director and writer Victor Salva in our previous videos.
Yeah.
I want to very briefly go over that again for new viewers, but if you want to see us go into more depth, I believe it's in our Jeepers Creepers 2 video, I think it is.
I think that's the one we go... I'm not sure. It's
in both in those videos we do go into a bit more depth, but prior to creating the first films, he did serve 3 years in prison for
child molestation.
Child molestation. And when this all came out, it does tarnish the films. It's one of the reasons we were excited about the new one, is it's a film that has nothing to do with him. But when it came, obviously that massively hindered his film career. Mm-hmm. So he never wanted to return to The Creeper, but then when this all came out and all he's rightfully disgusted by it, they didn't want to support his work anymore. Yeah. And he stopped getting work.
Yes.
We love Jeepers Creepers.
Yes.
But I don't like that I have to say this on every video. We absolutely obviously do not condone him, and he should never work again.
No, I like to think that every Creeper fan is in the same
position. To us, a
position.
movie is more than just the writer and the director.
Yes.
It doesn't stop these films from being good.
It is a problematic relationship I think we all have with these films, because you can't necessarily separate him from it, because he is the director, he is the writer, this is his baby essentially.
Yeah.
So that is always going to be there, but yes.
So I think very early on after that, when his career then started to go, disappear, he thought, I can return to Jeepers Creepers 3. I think he always had an idea of where he would take a third one. So I know the initial working titles was Jeepers Creepers 3, The Creeper Walks Among Us, which is actually pretty cool. And the one I think we all heard the most was Jeepers Creepers 3 Cathedral, Jeepers Creepers Cathedral. Yeah. Which was going to be set 23 years after Jeepers Creepers 2, and Gina Phillips... Is that Gina Phillips?
Yeah, who plays Trish in the first film.
Was going to return...
To avenge her brother. Yeah.
Yeah. This delay, basically, because of his criminal past, he could not get this film off the ground. He thought The Creeper would be a sure hit for him to make a film.
Well, the Cathedral, it did actually come very close to shooting, so that they almost managed to do it in 2015, and they were going to shoot it in Canada. But then Canadian talent agencies were warned about Salva's past. So it was a known thing in the industry. It clearly wasn't too much of a known thing.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the talent agencies found out, they scrapped.
I feel like it was the Me Too movement very much.
I think it brought it back into the public consciousness. Yeah, definitely. So ultimately the Cathedral storyline was scrapped. The funding was no longer there to do it.
So he had to make a smaller film. Which
severely impacted
this as the smallest budget out of the 3 of them.
Yes.
And it made this... Initially, it massively impacted its theatrical run as well. It was only in theatres for 1 day initially, then it had another 1 day. So I think... do you have the budget in the box office?
Yeah, so budget was $6.2 million. Box office, it grosses just under $4 million.
It
tanked.
Bomb. Absolutely tanked. I didn't see this one. I haven't seen any of them in the cinema.
I don't even remember this one coming out. 2017 is not that long ago, but I honestly just have no memory of this being advertised. I think I first watched it because it came onto Netflix
quite quickly.
Yeah.
So then he had to make a smaller movie with the plans to use that to drum up demand for another one for him to eventually do that cathedral storyline.
Yeah, so this one kind of became filler, essentially.
And therein lies a big problem.
Yes.
This film is set in between Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2.
Yes.
But I don't think the plot warrants it.
No, it doesn't. You could very easily have set this entire film 23 years after.
Gia Phillips's role is
reduced to a cameo
at the end. The cameo is set 23 years later, basically saying she's coming for the creeper.
It doesn't make sense, actually, yeah.
It really doesn't.
I didn't even think of that. That cameo is literally
the
23
plot of
years.
this film, because we have one returning character, which is Sergeant Tubbs.
Sergeant Tubbs.
Sergeant from the first film.
Yes.
This is now meant to be set the day after the original
day after
film.
Derry is taken.
This man has aged a fair bit.
Which, you know, considering it's, what, over 20 years? Oh, no, it wouldn't have been 20 years since...
This was 2017, so...
Would have been at least, like, someone do the
16
maths.
years.
16 years.
16
you
years.
Know,
he's aged a fair bit.
Yeah, he was already middle-aged when he did the first film.
Yeah.
So it's a noticeable... this guy, yes, age has had an impact on this guy. And they dyed his hair to make it look darker, but you can tell that they've dyed his hair.
Yeah.
Not the best solution necessarily.
There's basically 3 different plot threads going on here.
We have ultimately 3 different threads, and this is another part of the big kind of mess that is this film. So the main one, I guess, well, actually, I don't know if this is the main one, but the one is that there is a family who live on a farm. It's a grandma and her young granddaughter. The grandma, who is called Galen, she lost her son many years ago to the creeper. And she's kind of, well, I mean, how would you describe it? She's not exactly living a nice life, is she? She's
it only took
tormented
until
by
this
grief.
viewing for us to realise
Who her son is.
They are referenced in the first film.
Yes.
And we see their bodies. I never clocked that before.
Yeah, so in the first film, Trish and Derry, as they're driving on the highway, they talk about the rumours and the legend of Kenny and Darla. And Kenny and Darla were 2 people who presumably went to the same high school as Trish and Derry, were run off the road and were never seen again. Rumours persist of, certain body parts were found, but ultimately no one knows what happened to them. We ultimately see them in the first film strung up on the wall, so obviously the creeper took them. But in this film, in the third film, it turns out Kenny is this woman's son, Galen's son. And she has psychic visions of him. He appears to her.
Yeah, so we're back on the psychics again.
So we're back onto the psychic.
Is it psychic visions or is it a haunting?
Bit of both, I guess.
Because he has part of the creeper.
Yes.
And he buried it.
He has a hand.
Because in this storyline, if you touch part of the creeper, you get a psychic link to the creeper and you find out what it is.
Which ultimately is a bad thing for the creeper because therefore it makes him a little bit more vulnerable.
Yeah. But we have had several characters touch the creeper across the other 2 films and not had this happen.
Also,
I think it takes away from the mystery of those 2 characters because now it's like, so were they hunted down because he had this part of him? I always assume just because he wanted to eat them. But also, they were killed on their way to prom. So after this horrific thing, he had this experience with the creeper. He's always touched the hand. We see him as a ghost. He was pretty traumatized by what he saw. We see in flashbacks. And then he just goes off to prom.
And then he goes off to prom, apparently. Yeah.
So the creeper took them but then didn't go back for his hand?
I don't think it
because the hand was buried?
Yeah.
It doesn't make it...
No, it doesn't.
That whole plot point to me doesn't make any sense.
No.
I like... let's go over the other plot points and I'm going to go over what I like first because that's a much shorter list than what I don't like.
Okay, right, so that's thread 1. We've got Galen, who sees her son Kenny. She also has a granddaughter called Addie. The other thread, which could be interpreted as the main thread, is the policeman at the station. So Sergeant Tubbs, who is from the first film, remembering that this is set literally a day after Derry's taken, so really kind of the same night Derry's taken, only a few hours after. He just can't get over what he's seen. He knows he's seen something that is not human, that is potentially demonic. And then in comes a task force, like a creeper task force, that have always been aware of the creeper, that have themselves lost family and friends to the creeper, and have assembled this like bounty hunting task force. And they are determined to kill this thing once and for all. And so the guy that leads the task force is a guy called Danny, and he helps Tubbs.
Get used to the Danny. Like, Sergeant will shout Danny a lot in this film.
Danny and Tubbs kind of team up, and Danny fills Tubbs in on what the creeper is and what they know about it. And a lot of the film is Tubbs like trying to just like come to terms
Task Force,
with everything.
it's built up of people who've lost people due to the creeper 23 years
Yes.
prior. He does have a good line where he's like, "We have to do this now, because I'll either be dead or too damn old by the next time he comes around." And I was like, I like that aspect.
Credit where credit is due.
Everyone tries their best.
The dialogue isn't bad. The acting isn't that bad. We will get to it, but there are some some good things in this film. It's not all terrible. But yeah, so that's one of the threads. And then the third thread, which is arguably the weakest, is we have like this group of boys, like these who have an encounter with the creeper. I guess that takes up a little bit of screen time.
That links in a little bit because is Addie's thing separate, like another plot thread potentially?
It's one of the few times where the threads kind of intersect.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a bit of a problem. But essentially there's a big kind of sequence where we have
is Addie meant to be... She could also be seen as the main character, I guess. The granddaughter.
Yeah.
Who was just trying to get food for her horse.
Yeah.
And a guy who works at the feed place. Like so... And
they have a little bit of a budding romance thing going on.
Yeah.
She gets taken by the creeper. One of the bad boys on the bikes also gets taken by the creeper, so they find themselves in a situation where they're trapped in the back of the truck. So it's one of those rare moments in this film, actually, where two different stories do kind of intertwine.
But it's not... Whereas Jeepers Creepers 2, you have two plot storylines that interweave perfectly at the end.
You do.
These just don't... Because a bit of the task force does intercept with the grandmother because they want to touch it. They find... This is a big problem. You never find out what they see.
No.
So it's like we now know that these characters know what the creeper is.
Yeah.
But we don't. They're trying to build up enough hype and oh my god, next time we're going to find out what the creeper is. It doesn't do it for me.
It doesn't work. So we have these two big moments in the film that's built up where Galen digs up the hand that her son has buried all these years before, even though he begs her as a ghost not to do this. She ends up holding hands with the amputated creeper hand, and she goes into some kind of dream trance, clearly seeing something, incredible, which we as the audience do not get to see.
Yeah.
And then it happens again with Danny. He also holds the hand, and he's very shaken by what he sees. We don't get to see it. Clearly, there was a cut-off point with the budget.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
yeah.
I honestly think it's just a way to try and build hype for another film.
Potentially. It doesn't work for me.
This plot, when you look at it like that, is there a reason it has to be set in between the first two films? Why couldn't it have been set 23 years later? I mean, we know what this is. I'm just going to spoil bits of this, so no one cares about this film.
Spoilers ahead.
Yeah. Again, we know it's hard to we already know we don't find out what the creeper is.
Yeah.
We know the creeper can't die because Jeepers Creepers 2 follows straight afterwards. We don't see any of these characters in there, so does that plot really matter? One of the characters gets on the school bus from the second one at the end, with a brief line saying that after the game he's going to stay with some family.
So he gets off the bus. Before shit really hits the fan.
What's the point of him being on the bus in the first place?
It's just, I think it's literally there as a reminder
of what happens next.
The school bus, or just a reminder for people to think, wow, I'm going to go and watch the second one now.
Yeah.
It's.
I mean, you pulled up a Dread Central review of the time saying it was the best in the franchise, and it's like, what? Jeepers Creepers 2 is the best in the franchise.
Yeah.
There's no reason this plot had to be set in between the first two. It should have just been set in modern day.
My biggest gripe with the movie, the random kind of plots aside,
is it the creeper's wardrobe?
We will get to the creeper's wardrobe because I know that is an issue. This is a big issue. It's also the daytime issue, which we will get to. But for me, you mentioned it. The first film, you have the creeper versus Trish and Derry. We start the film with Trish and Derry. We end the film with Trish and Derry. Well, Trish. And we are with them all of the way. We're invested in their story. We get to know them as characters. We're invested in them as brother and sister. We want them to beat this thing. And a chase and a weird relationship between the creeper and Trish and Derry ensues. It becomes personal for him. Mm-hmm. So at the end, when it comes down with the creeper versus Trish or Derry, which one is he going to take? It's actually emotional. We've had a whole film of a chase here. Second film, it's the creeper versus the school kids on the bus, and
Yeah.
also Ray Wise.
It's also...
It's personal. It's
the creeper,
emotional.
we know very on, the creeper is on a time limit.
The creeper's on a time limit, exactly.
Yeah. He needs to eat as much as he can.
Stakes
high.
high.
Stakes high. We know exactly what it is. This is pretty directionless. We just see the creeper taking out random people.
There is no connection established between
No.
him and these characters.
The creeper never has a scene with the grandma.
No.
Who has this hand in this information about him. They never share a scene together.
No. There is no... Part of the whole thing of the creeper is he is kind of mischievous and he has a little bit of a personality. We talked about this, I think, in our other creeper videos. And that gets to shine depending on who he's chasing after.
Yeah.
There is no sense of a chase. There's no sense of urgency.
He just pops up in places.
He pops up. It's like, what is he even doing? Like, there's no real sense of purpose for him.
Yeah.
He's just like driving his truck. Occasionally, he'll pick up some random person. And then that's it. Like, there's no connection or relationship that is established. And it
doesn't feel
so
like he's hunting down his people
palpable.
for particular parts. It does feel like he's just killing everybody he comes across.
For the sake of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like there's no...
Which, we can gather, he's still a couple of days... Because they have to... I'm trying to think along the timeline. They have to go... The bus has to go to the game, play the game, and come back. So he's at least a couple of days away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
And it's just...
I don't know. It's just not... There's no sense of dread.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way of saying it.
Yeah. It's...
We had it so brilliantly and perfectly in 1 and 2. It's lost here. And I think it is because there are too many characters
I think
that we don't spend enough time with.
If they go on the plot point of Trish leading a group of people to take out the creeper...
That would have been good.
It would have been really good.
The thing... Sorry, I will say, before we go on to more of Creeper, is I guess... The whole idea of what Cathedral was meant to be is Trish still suffering, I guess, from a bit of PTSD about the whole thing, survivor's guilt, trying to avenge her brother. We do get a little bit of that in this film with the grandma.
Mm-hmm.
There is very much that sense of she is stuck in that time where her son died. She can't move past it.
Yeah.
She is forever haunted.
There's hints of it with the mercenaries as
There's
well.
hints of it, like it plays a little bit with the idea of guilt and PTSD and the need for revenge, but it just doesn't. It's not as good as it could have been and it should have been.
Can I go into what my main issues are?
You go.
A lot of my issues, aside from plot, well, actually, not even issues. Like Jonathan Breck does return.
It's
He is
Jonathan
the creeper.
Breck.
But you kind of feel like he seems a bit soulless.
I think he lost a spark in this film.
I feel like his career kind of went the way of Victor's because of his association, because I haven't seen him in anything else.
No.
But also, it's been 16 years.
It's been 16 years. I mean, the guy was in his 30s when he did the first one.
Yeah.
So, age will have a bit to do with it.
He does have a few brief moments that are like quite mischievous, and you can kind of see there he is. There's
a
the creeper.
little hint of it.
But for the most part, he does just look a bit tired.
Yeah.
It's almost like he doesn't want to be there.
I think, that's like the best way of describing it, I think. But it's also, the character has no personal relationship with any of these other characters. So it's like there's no room for him to be mischievous with them. Because
when they're trapped in the car, and he knows like the blood away, he wipes the blood away for the air. That to me is like the closest that we get to the creeper that we know.
And love and are terrified of.
Yeah. And personally, I'm not bothered about the red t-shirt.
But there is a red t-shirt.
He changes his wardrobe. Which means, so this is set after... The logic we can do, because he doesn't have any clothes on at the end of the first film. We see him, he's completely bare.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So, to me, if the creeper can have a driver's license and a home,
or at least learn to drive a car.
Yeah, and we find out he has a radio. We've seen he has a vinyl player.
He likes his music.
It makes sense to me that he has a wardrobe.
Well, this is what I mean. He has.
So he dons a wear t-shirt.
He has
personality.
But it means
we have to believe at the end of this film, he changes back to his original outfit.
Yeah, he didn't like the red. The red wasn't working
for whatever reason. That it doesn't bother me. And the only pops you can get are from the third film, so we have to have the one with the red t-shirt.
Yeah.
My issue is they tried to do too much with a small budget in terms of effects and production value.
Mm-hmm.
The van, for instance, it doesn't look the same. It's not the same van at all. It's smaller. It looks cheaper. apparently the van is now sentient.
It's booby trapped.
It's booby trapped. Again, it's like when they have it has spikes that come down like this when people try again. I'm like, that's cool enough, but where are those spikes coming from?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
Where were these?
Or it has grenades that like go along the road and like they'll spin and then blow up under cars and stuff like that, and knives on ropes that come out of the exhaust. And
you see,
the effect. Sorry.
I was just going to say on that point that I think if we'd have had the original Cathedral script, we wouldn't have had the sentient truck. I feel like that was a last-ditch attempt to try and do something interesting with a dud script. Yeah,
they tried pushing their effects budget further than what they could actually achieve. Like, the grenades on the road looked awful. They tried to do a few car flips that looked really bad. I paused it several times because there was a green screen key of people in cars that looked amateur.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, you can tell there's no glass, and like they've obviously rolled the windows down, so they can get a nice key, but they've not put the glass back in again. And it's like there's one bit where it's like it just looked grey. The characters they had some bubbling on them, and the hands on them, and they just turned grey.
You had to pause it.
I was actually appalled
you were
that in 2017 we had a green screen that was that bad. But the biggest offender is the wings. We talked about it in our previous videos. I think even the wings from the very first film look better than they do here.
Probably.
And by that logic, like half the time they just look like still images.
Yeah.
They don't move. They peaked in the second one. They looked incredible.
The shower curtain.
The great use of the shower curtain wings.
Yeah.
Looked mixture of practical and VFX. And it just looked really, really good.
It did.
But when they look as bad as they do here, they use them in too many scenes.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, that's spreading that budget too far. And that's one of my biggest problems. I'm watching them. I'm so distracted by how bad things look. The gunshots look off. The creeper himself looks cheap.
He does.
And I think that's a big problem because for some reason, the majority of this film is set during the day.
Yes.
We very rarely see the creeper in the day.
Mm-hmm.
We see him the very first shot in the original one.
Yeah.
But again, he has his hat on. He's cloaked. We don't see his face properly. Or in the second one when he's running through the cornfields, and he specifically made him look darker there so that you wouldn't get any like features of him. This whole one is he's hatless. Everything. We just see him in details, and you can just see that he looks cheaper than he has done before.
It's a lot of the Jaws effect, isn't it? I guess with the first film, we don't actually see that much of him, but we know the threat is there. And when the scenes are set in the day, it's mainly it's the truck. We don't actually see him. We see the truck on the highway, which makes it scary. The second film, I think the only time we see him in daylight is in that vision where, Mitzi sees him running after...
Yeah. And the initial shot when he takes the farmers.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. But again, it's like they restrict what details we can see. And because it's like that's really bright and he's really dark, it's a nice contrast in the cornfields. We see him running through grass here. There's a lot of slow-mo scenes in this as well. But it's like him just running... It's really weird, like the when you see him just running through grass, he's just like this.
Yeah.
And it's...
Oh God.
Can I talk about what the worst shot in the...
Yeah, go on.
There's the final showdown between Danny and the creeper. They've got this, to replicate the harpoon, they have a massive machine gun mounted on the back.
Yeah.
The creeper jumps up, bad wings, axe, he's floating through the air, the gun's stuck.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's had a flip and he's like he's desperately trying to cock it and turn it. The timing of the creeper going through the air in slow motion doesn't quite match him who's not quite in... He's slower, but he's not quite in slow motion. So it's like, he's still coming.
Yeah.
Still coming. Turn. All right, he's still going. Fine, I'm going to start shooting now. And the effects of like the bullets going through him.
If this...
Look, and the creeper's just like, why is he unshot? He's just like...
Just taking it.
He's just taking it. And then they hit and it's like...
If this was the first or second film, the creeper would have taken out a small town in the amount of time he had to get to Danny in that scene.
It leads to one cool shot because you just kind of see like the creeper like get up. He's obviously like a bit like oh, and then he uses like because we know his weapons react.
Yes.
Have some sort of link to him. He's kind of like walks and puts his arm back, and you see his axe come up embedded in Danny's head, and just whips out in the ground. And I'm like, all right, that was genuinely really cool, but the shot beforehand is so bad.
Yeah.
And so distracting.
There's way too much daylight. I said...
I don't understand why it was all set during the day. Because there's two scenes in particular which look incredible. It's the opening scene when we see someone being chased down.
Right, so...
And there's a scene where he retrieves the truck from the compound.
Yeah.
And again, it's like the sentience. This bit I don't mind. When he stood on the truck and the truck drives away on its own, looks amazing.
That, by the way, is the first time we actually see the creeper in the film.
Yeah.
Where he's stood on top of the truck like a boss.
He's nicely backlit.
He's holding onto his axe.
Yeah.
And then you've got the police people
who just have no idea how to do this.
Like, have no idea how to react to this. That is a nice shot. Right, so credit where credit is due. Some of the nice things...
When it's shot at night, it looks really good.
The entire opening shot of... It turns out it's Kenny. Well, it's a bit of a flashback. And
Kenny's not the one being chased. Kenny's in the car.
Kenny is in the car. Someone is being chased. Kenny is kind of watching this happen. All of that kind of happens in slow-mo. And something that I've always really liked about all of these films, the sound design is very good. And we get, throwing stars. Creeper's obviously thrown one, and we get this nice slow-mo, like, whooshing sound of it spinning in the air. That was a really, really good... I just like that whole sequence. Yeah, the first appearance of the creeper on top of the truck was really good. The opening is actually pretty solid.
The first, 5 to 10 minutes, I was like, all right, I'm into this. I'm into this film.
Yeah, exactly.
Even at Addie's escape later, I do like it. Don't know how he falls for his own traps.
Yeah.
There's a bar that goes in between the driver's seats. For some reason, that's how one character dies, and she tricks the creeper into getting hit with his own trap.
So a big
which does lead to a cool thing. His eye pops out, and then he tries to use his wings, and he can't because we've seen him be affected by his injuries before.
I like that bit too.
He tries to throw his spear, but he can't because he can't throw an accurate because he's got one eye. But then he leads a chase again in the dark.
Yeah.
And it looks really cool.
Yeah, he's been injured. He's got his head injury. He's missing an eye, and he goes to chase after Addie, and he goes to fly, and instantly he just collapses. He can't fly, and he gets frustrated with himself.
Because he's had a spike through the brain.
I do like that bit. Yeah.
Because you see, that to me mirrors a bit of Jeepers Creepers too. Obviously, when he gets harpooned through the eye, or like javelin through the eye, and you see him afterwards. He's a bit like, functions from there.
It's also a bit cruel in a way because if the creeper has killed Derry at this point, Derry, then presumably those eyes that he's wearing
are Derry's eyes.
Are Derry's, and he's already lost one.
Yeah.
He killed Derry for one eye, basically.
Yeah.
At that point. Another thing I do like about this movie, even though we've just talked about how shit that it's set in daylight, the film was filmed in Louisiana.
It does have that nice Louisiana feel to it.
Yeah. So the first film was shot in Florida, I believe. And Louisiana, although very different from Florida, visually it is quite similar.
Yeah.
And we do get a lot of sunset scenes, really nice cinematography. So I do quite enjoy seeing that. They use that very, very well.
One shot really annoys me. Well, it's that when he finally decides, I'm going to go after this hand. Which, it's fair, 20 days prior, he could have done this. He could have done this as soon as he woke up. He goes and finds it. It's in a field. It's nailed to a piece of cardboard. It says, "We know what you are." And he screams, and we get it opens. We see it from the distance. It's CG. Because you can tell for the whole thing because it's quite cheap. You can see them on there, and it's like, there's no layers to that. It's just a really bad prosthetic. I quite like that it kills all the birds, because they seem to think that he hunts where the birds go. I always assumed that the birds followed him. Yeah,
Danny suspects that, if you want to look for him, just follow the birds, because he will migrate with them.
I always assumed they migrated with him.
Yeah.
But then when he screams, he's angry. They're not again the noise that we all know and love.
God.
But all the crows start dying around him. That's really cool.
It's a cool scene. It's just also kind of laughable because it's so dramatic. He literally collapses on his knees and is like, no.
It's almost like
it's just
Willem Dafoe in Platoon.
Yeah, it's just so out of place. And then, but it is cool. He makes that horrible screechy noise, and then all the birds collapse around.
But it's just a shame after seeing it. Even the scene when he opens between the first two films look really cool. I always compare it to when Predator roars for the first time and the manacles open up. To this, and we see it from a mid shot. He's there, so they're just kind of back here.
The thing is,
it just looks cheap. That's my problem. It's so cheap.
He's human enough he can also read. He's read that
Yeah.
sign saying, "Oh, we know what you are." So presumably, if he's any kind of intelligent creeper, which we know he is, he's then gonna kill the grandma and everyone who lives on that farm, because why would you let them live at that point?
Yeah.
What would be the purpose
What
of
he
just
lets
letting them
he lets
carry
the
on?
cop live.
He does. It's almost like he forgets about him.
I also see that maybe they wanted him to come back in the next one.
I have no idea.
I was like, well, you still a sharpshooter? And he's like, hell yeah, I am.
So stupid.
Oh, the amount of times they call him like, they say, you bastard to it. Like,
Yeah.
they all shout the same thing at it.
My issue with a lot of franchises is when you start introducing new things that weren't in the previous installment, like a sentient truck.
That is entirely bulletproof, by the way.
The fact that
it's invulnerable, this thing.
His amputated limbs now have a psychic link to him. When you start messing with it, you lose me.
Well, you think, like, at the end of the second one, when he's obviously been tied up and put up on the wall, they're separate parts, so they don't seem to know what it is.
But,
they still don't. They call it a battle hell, but they still don't know what it is. But assuming they must have had that same experience, it just doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't fit. It's like this thing has had limbs being chopped off left, right,
What
and centre.
if they set it afterwards? They had part of its limbs, and what if they did some sort of like Native American or Aztec ritual using the limb, and that's how they found out about it?
Yeah.
That I would accept that. Because
Yeah.
I've read some comics that are based around this.
Yeah.
Which came out like 2018, which were really good, but they also show that, because prior to this, due to a deleted scene in 2, we've seen that his history goes at least back to the medieval era. The comics set him as a potential Aztec god, or at least he was worshipped by the Aztecs as gods, and they used to sacrifice people to him. Which I think would make sense. Obviously, that's not his origins. He must be older than that. But it would make sense that past civilizations would see him as a god.
Ultimately...
Oh, they say that Croatoa...
Oh, Croatoa, yeah.
Yeah, that
the
was...
Roanoke,
Roanoke was down to the creeper. And
yeah.
I could see that.
I ultimately...
They are better stories than what the film came up with.
I like not knowing.
I do like not knowing. I feel like we inevitably will find out.
If we are gonna get... Well, I know obviously we've got Jeepers Creepers 4, which we may see.
Jeepers Creepers Reborn.
Yeah, which may come out in the next few years, we're not sure. But I would like them to potentially go down now what the Predator route is. Go back into the past.
Imagine what, like an Army of Darkness style one, make it medieval.
Yeah. Or,
that would be so cool.
The new Predator movie, Prey, they've gone back to Native American.
Yeah. Because there's so many great theories out there about what this thing is.
Yeah, let's pair them off with...
If they've done a new film, they're not going to let the cat out of the bag in the first film. Because they basically... essentially starting again. You don't want to, like, kill your franchise straight away by revealing everything.
No.
But is this even the same creeper? We just don't know. It's not Jonathan Breck playing him. It's actually a Manchester lad playing him. Which is interesting. He's been in 2 episodes of Corrie.
He's been in Corrie. He's from Wigan.
Which is good. From what I've seen, he looks the part.
Yeah, I
we ever
haven't
get this
seen
film.
a lot of him, but yes. If they've hired him, obviously, I trust him.
Yeah, the makeup, from what I've seen, looks really good.
I think it's just a shame we probably won't see it for a while.
Yeah, and to an extent, it's like, should this franchise just stay buried?
Yeah, potentially.
It's just...
I mean, I know we've said it before, I think in the Jeepers Creepers 2 video, but for me, there are 2 creeper films. There is the first one, there is the second one. Both of them are brilliant. The
Jeepers Creepers 3, it feels like a fan film.
It honestly feels like it wasn't made by the same director.
It's clear that, like, he expected to have a great career directing. He never wanted to go back to the creeper, but he felt forced to. And I think that was the last thing he's directed.
Well, he was kind of riding on his own success.
He sold the rights to Jeepers Creepers because that's the only thing he could do at that point. He held on to them for so long.
Yeah.
In the hope that he'd have this revived career, but he'll never work again. And good.
Yes.
Just good. That film was a train wreck. There's elements in it that are enjoyable. And I think we enjoyed watching it just for how bad it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've both seen it 3 times now.
Yeah.
And we vowed that that's
it. I'm done now. Watched it when it first came out. I watched it with you when we decided to watch all of them.
Yeah.
And we watched it for this. I'm done watching that movie now. I want to watch. I need a palate cleanser, so I might watch the second one.
I love that. Yeah, it's weird how both of us are more eager to watch the second one.
I do love the first one. I really love the first one.
The first one, for me, is the scariest of all of them.
Yeah. So
but for that reason, I end up watching the second one because it doesn't scare me as much.
Is our order of them the same? Like the second one's the best, and the first and the third?
No, I still go the order they're made.
Or 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. But the only reason I don't watch the first one that often is because it scares me.
Yeah.
The second one is fantastic.
The second one's more of an action movie.
It is. It doesn't scare me as much. It's like it's the Aliens to the equivalence of that.
I love the look of the creeper in the second one.
Yeah.
Especially like he's more. I think because he's fed, he's more.
Yeah.
He's damp. He's damp. He's juicy.
He's not in the third one.
The wings look incredible.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if it's just Jonathan Brecht's physicality, but in the third one, he looks like hench. Did you notice
actually,
that? He looks like bulked out, which is weird. I don't know if that suits the creeper.
Yeah.
It's so... Yeah, I don't know. It's a fucking mess of a movie. I'm not
you know, it's
gonna
also
lie.
like... Because in both other ones, we see the creeper like with less clothes on, so you can see more of its body.
Yeah.
We don't in this one.
Yeah, in both films, I didn't even clock onto that. Both films, at some point, he is ultimately like naked. We do.
So you can see him as the full monster,
like the demon that
but
he
not
is.
in this one.
No.
And also, you notice this one, like you can notice like the makeup around his mouth is pretty bad. You can see a lot of his human lips
you can.
behind. It just doesn't look as good.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And I do think that Jonathan Brecht does a good job with what he has, but something is missing that was in the first and second film.
Yeah.
And I know time will have, had an impact on that. But ultimately, I think even Brecht knew that he was not working on a good installment.
Well, it's also like
of this franchise.
with this film, that other production companies, a lot of casting agents got told, if you were having to tell their cast and crew, if you work on this film, you will be blacklisted, which I disagree with massively.
Mm.
Obviously, the director is the director. We all know, we can't beat this dead horse enough. Takes more than him to make a movie, and a lot of talented people put a lot of time into this.
Yes.
And I don't think you should be blacklisted for trying to get... Because there's obviously a lot of young people then, by the VFX, I imagine, a lot of very young VFX artists.
Mm.
You shouldn't be blacklisted for trying to get your foot in the door in a well-known franchise.
No.
And I think a lot of the cast do a good job. They try their best with what
they do.
got.
Look, the acting is not an issue for me in this.
No.
It's not the acting.
For the night scenes, the cinematography isn't a problem. Like, it looks amazing.
No,
there.
it's the plot itself. If the plot was better, I would forgive it for a lot of the other inconsistencies.
Like I said, if they
issues.
tone back on using the wings a bit, if we didn't have like the CG grenade stuff, if they pulled back on some of the VFX in the later shots and concentrated on the important ones, it could have saved certain scenes for me. It's like when we first see him in the daylight with his wings out.
Yeah.
Did we need the wings for that?
No.
No. He would have been creepy enough in that situation without them. It's weird because we actually see inside the car with him driving.
Hmm. Well, we
actually see him drive. So yes, considering he only wakes up for 23 days, the fact that he's somehow learned to drive.
One tiny little moment in the film that I did appreciate is the scene where all the boys and they find the truck that for some reason has just been abandoned in a field.
Yeah.
And all the boys are like, "Oh, let's go and see what this thing is." It's like, it's a truck.
I like how they reference the song. The Creeper is a folklore thing at this point.
This is what I like. They recognise the truck for all the stories that they've heard.
They recognise Bee eating you.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh my god, I've heard stories."
I do
about
like how the
truck.
mercenaries had a license plate saying "Bee killing you."
Bee killing you, yeah. But yeah, I do like that, how it kind of dabbles with the legend of the Creeper, which I believe that also plays a big part in what the fourth film will be, in that he is a legend. People are aware of this thing.
Because the one thing, because one of them pees on the truck, and
That
he's got one of them. Well, there's one's escaped. He's killed two, and very very easily. Mm. One has escaped on his bike, and this is that bit of personality coming through. He's annoyed that he's been disrespected. Yeah. He smells it and he's like, he goes after him purely because he disrespected his truck. A little bit of that person, because the Creeper is very playful until you piss him off.
It could also be, oh fuck, I've missed one.
I think he knew. Yeah. He did know. Because he seems to let people go all the time in this.
He does actually. If he hones in on someone, then he's not really that arsed about like
Yeah.
letting other people live or die. Yeah, I don't know. It's just as I say, I've
The
seen
Creeper's motivations are just all over the place in this film.
there is no real motivation. It's like I don't know where he's driving to. I don't really know like how it's just a mess. It's a mess. In the first one we had drive, we had urgency. In the second one we have drive, we have urgency. It's personal. It feels like it's building and building, and it crescendos both films, and like this a brilliant finale with all the characters that we're invested in. In this third film, it's just the biggest disappointment. We don't care about these characters, to be honest. Like, they have no involvement with the Creeper.
We've barely mentioned any of them or their names. And because you just don't care.
No, we don't. Who is the main character in this? Is it the policeman?
It's
is
not
it
even
Addie? Is it the grandma?
It's not even the Creeper.
It's not the Creeper. Yeah, it's
The
like...
truck?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's got more personality.
I don't fucking know.
So...
It's just, yeah. If you do want to see this film, it's free on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
It's also free on YouTube. So you don't necessarily need to pay money to watch it.
Yeah.
If you are curious.
It's one of those films, like, because of its associate... Like, I don't know what it's like with the original films with money going to Victor Salva now. Now he doesn't own the rights to them anymore.
Yeah.
Or to the franchise. But if it's free to watch... that's fine. That's why I'll happily rewatch these because we have them on DVD. So
you'll notice we don't have the third one.
We don't have to give him money.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a sad end to what could have been absolutely rock solid.
A rock solid trilogy. Yeah.
But
But
circumstances.
it's even did we ever need a third film? Like,
no.
I would have always yearned for more, but I would have been really happy if they just left it at 2 and that was it, done.
You fault the ending of the second film?
No. And I can't fault the ending of the first
perfect.
film either.
No,
Both 1 and 2 are perfect movies.
Yeah. The first ending is bleak as fuck. The second film rounds things off.
The second film is just a perfect follow-up.
It is.
It's the ending that we needed. It's like
yeah.
the second film doesn't work without the events of the first one. So they complement each other so well.
They do.
This actually is a detriment to both of those films because it brings the events down, I think.
It does. If you watch these films in the order that they're set, so 1, 3, 2, it wouldn't work.
It doesn't work.
It wouldn't work at all.
So yeah, thanks for stopping by.
I'm so happy we don't have to talk about it anymore.
I know. I already picked the name for this one. I'm going to call... Because we have to talk about Jeepers Creepers then. Now we have to talk about Jeepers Creepers 2. I'm going to call this one, I suppose we have to talk about Jeepers Creepers 3.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it. Our Creeper trilogy videos are done.
Are done.
And then we're going to review the new one when it comes out.
Well, whenever that will be.
But we don't have to talk about this film anymore.
No, gonna forget about it. Maybe watch the second one as a reminder of how good it was.
Yeah.
In its
So
heyday.
thanks for stopping by, guys. We hope you've enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
We actually did kind of enjoy prepping for this one.
Well, there's a lot to say about it.
There is a lot to say, and for a film that actually doesn't have that much behind the scenes on it.
Yeah.
Strangely, like I struggled to find information on this film.
Yeah, the development of it is interesting.
Yeah.
For nefarious reasons, unfortunately, but it is interesting nevertheless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting film, I guess, in terms of the legacy of horror, I suppose, too.
Yeah.
Quite unique in that way. But yeah, we'll never watch it again if I can avoid it.
Yeah. So, thanks for stopping by, guys, and we will see you next week.